Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the Star Trek Adventure rules by Modiphius. This actual play is performed by adults and contains adult themes. We welcome infinite diversity and infinite combinations. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., which may bear resemblance to entities living or from the mirror universe, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your storyteller. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways podcast. I am your storyteller this evening, Michael Diamond. My pronouns are he, him, and I am bringing the first in a short series of episodes that we're going to play Star Trek Adventures. And I think I've assembled a wonderful cast for you to enjoy this Star Trek story through. And we're going to get to introductions, and we're going to begin to my right.
Hello there. My name is Mare, and I will be playing Lieutenant Woods.
Thank you, Lieutenant. To the lieutenant's right.
Hi, this is Skip. I'm playing Kavan, son of Lorak.
Fantastic. Skip is one of our amazing backers, and so we're super thankful we can finally get this story cracking with him in it. To Skip's right.
This is Morgan. I play Ensign Suvik. Our pronouns are she, her, and we are a Vulcan security officer.
Fantastic. And last but most certainly not least.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I play Ensign Latara, and I'm just ready to get this party started.
Well, I am too, but before we get the party started, so to speak, I want to give the audience an opportunity to understand a little bit more about our Starfleet officers that we've gathered here today. And to do so, we're going to sort of turn right back around towards the first chair to Mare and have her give us just a short, rough description of Lieutenant Cassandra Woods.
All right. So, Cassandra Woods is one of those folks who has always looked younger than she actually is, to the point of, hey, what's a kid doing up on the bridge? Very petite. Usually keeps her hair cropped short around to her shoulders, sometimes shorter, fluctuates within that. She has tanned skin, dark hair that tends to curl at times, particularly if it wasn't properly dried or something. If she doesn't have a particular reason to do a lot of work to her hair, she's not going to. She's rather on the short end, but has boundless energy, almost seems to be vibrating with energy as she makes her way about, leads head first with other things. And, for being pretty direct as someone in a command position, she still gets a little overexcitable, might ramble on about something that she likes, particularly a book that she might be interested in, or an adorable animal that she saw on the last excursion. She just gets really excited at times, but then can get right back to business at the flip of a switch.
Interesting. Okay. So when we think about Lieutenant Woods, Star Trek Adventure uses values to sort of give a little bit more flesh to the overall makeup of a character. And so I wonder if you could list a couple of values that might ring true when it comes to Lieutenant Woods.
Absolutely. For her, service has been something in her family. She is not the first person who is a part of Starfleet in her family, and she takes great pride in being able to continue that legacy. However, while some of her family may have been more of the hotshot pilot or the incredibly sharp and brilliant scientist, she aims to understand. She aims to communicate. She also focuses on leading with kindness whenever she is there. She wants to aim not necessarily to be a soft little pushover, but to connect as opposed to divide. And finally, she was a little bit by the book with things, so she always wants to be prepared, and she constantly remains vigilant with her head on a swivel in most cases.
Fantastic. Okay. So another portion of, we'll just say, not attributes per se, but another thing that can help define characters in SCA are what they focus on. So these are realistically player-created focuses where they show what that character's specific what they've spent the early portion of their lives helping to define themselves. So if you look at Lieutenant Wood's focuses, what does she draw and what does she hone in on specifically?
A lot of diplomacy, a lot of communication. If there was a younger position, I imagine that she was the type to do the first contact with other starships, the friendly voice on the other end of the line. And through that, she also gained a knowledge of how to improve the sound on something, how to make things connect and go smoothly. So everything for her is about kind of smoothing things out, composure, persuasion, communication, and a little bit of mechanical engineering, a little bit of keeping stuff connected.
Sure, absolutely. It's hard to have a relationship with another party if you can't communicate effectively with them. She's in part of the command division, obviously, but she might not necessarily be the type of, brash, iron-fisted sort of command officer that a lot of folks are used to seeing, the person ready to go out and make an enormous name for themselves. So that's cool. Glad to have Lieutenant Woods on this journey with us. Okay. So the next person in our crew might be just a little bit different. So Skip, I wonder if you'd walk us through Ensign Kavan and give us the description, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Normally, when you think Klingon, if he's going to be in Starfleet, you would expect to see probably the red or the gold outfit. He wears the blue. He is a medical officer. He stands very tall for a Klingon, about 6'11". He has one of those ridges straight down from the top of his head to the very beginnings of his nose. He has a full goatee with his hair kind of braided but pulled back into a ponytail. He does have one scar. It's on his left cheek. And if you ask him, he will tell you that he was sparring with his sister when he was young and got a little carried away. He is very subtle, if you can use that word, for a Klingon. He is very soft-spoken most days. He's very respectful, having grown up on Beta Z as his family, Lorak, of the House Krek, was the diplomatic ambassador from Kronos to Beta Z. So he pretty much spent most of his time growing up there. That is kind of where he has learned patience over temper, I guess would be a best way to describe him.
I like that. Okay, so if we think about the ensigns, some of their core values, give us an idea of what you believe some of their core values would be.
The first thing, and it's kind of goes without saying, growing up on Beta Z, he's learned empathy over aggression. A lot of times he has been faced with difficult situations, and he has chosen to listen more than to try to grab the batleth and solve the problem with violence. He is more of a listener than a warrior. But don't get me wrong, he can fight with the best of them. Another value he has is, speaking of fighting, the medical bay is a battlefield. The way he looks at it is that any disease, anything that's never been seen before, or anything that one of his patients is fighting is his battlefield. He's not out in a bird of prey. He's right there in the sick bay, in the medical bay, fighting for his patient's life. So he feels that is his true battlefield. Another one is his Klingon blood does burn. So in his past, he has been challenged. Growing up on Beta Z, not actually growing up on the home world, he has faced his share of, let's just say, Klingons testing his blood. And he is not afraid to back down. He's not afraid to let that blood boil a little bit if necessary. And finally, the big one he always goes by is Tovacor can wait. If there's anything that he can do to prolong his patient's life, he is going to do it, because that's why he went into the medical field. He feels like the patient's life is worth more than an instant death and honor. He would like the patient to provide more honor to go to Stovercore with. And by doing that, he extends their life as best he can.
Yeah, it makes good sense. If we look at some of Kavan's focuses, then what are some of the things that over his life he's focused on?
First of all, his composure. He is a Klingon. He does have the blood boiling every now and then, so he has learned to temper that. His focus has mainly been xenobiology. Growing up on Beta Z as well, he was exposed to a lot of different species coming through, especially his father being in the diplomatic corps. He got to interact with a lot of the Federation folks, and he learned to have a passion of developing how they are, who they are, how they tick, what makes them who they are. And by studying in xenobiology and also psychiatry, he has learned to actually listen, learn, and that's how he gathers all of his knowledge. And he's trying to pass it along in doing the best he can in Starfleet.
Yeah, absolutely.
One other thing was he's a specialist in infectious diseases. One of his training missions, he actually had to battle a plague on a small planet. And after that, he started to study more into the infectious diseases. How does it spread? Why did it do that? Why did it manifest here? Why is it not manifesting there? Things like that. And then finally, he is Klingon. He knows how to fight. He can do hand-to-hand. He knows how to use a bat'leth. So he doesn't like to, but if the situation arises that he has to, he's prepared.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So we will move down then, and at least on my screen, to Ensign Suvik and Morgan. Why don't Morgan give us an idea of what the ensign looks like and perhaps any particular things that you would want to point out?
Sure. Ensign Suvik is your typical looking Vulcan. She's about 5'9". She's got brown eyes, dark hair, probably dark brown to black. She has got some olive colored skin. She's pretty trim as per her Starfleet training as a security officer. And even on Vulcan. So she's pretty athletic looking. She grew up, her parents were in politics. They are part of the Vulcan Space Council on Vulcan. Her father, Kavik, and her mother, Valath. And they really tried to encourage her to go the same route, and she did not. They were not pleased, or as not pleased as a Vulcan can get, when she joined the Starfleet Academy. She is very by the book, Starfleet protocol. Part of that is from one of her first starship assignments was on the USS Liberator, which was at Wolf 359 and was one of the surviving ships. Yeah, so she did escape destruction by the Borg at Wolf 359. However, she did sustain an injury when her console blew up during battle. She ended up with shrapnel in her various parts of her body and had to spend some time healing. She does have a scar from the left eye all the way down her cheek. And while she could get that scar removed, she's using it as a reminder to always be vigilant and never underestimate an enemy combatant. One of the things that affected her from that battle, other than, having some serious injuries, was the death of her friend, Gabby, a Trill science officer on the USS Liberator. She ended up, fortunately, dying during Wolf 359, and it has since impacted Suvik in such a way to, maybe be a little bit more closed off from some of those more personal friendships and kind of maintain a little bit more professionalism.
Certainly. Okay. So I wonder if you would give us an idea of some of the ensign's values.
Sure. So just like most Vulcans, she values that control over emotion. Having emotion hinder you in the midst of battle can be detrimental, not only to myself, but to my fellow crew members and the ship at whole. Also, all my education and training on Vulcan in preparation for, my life. Knowledge is power. She always makes sure she can assess alien threats in her, either extra studying. Meditating also helps kind of hone in on what she should be focusing on. She did go through the culinar, so she does have that mental focus. One of the other values she has is keen mind, keen eye, which is really important for a security officer to be ever mindful of your environment. And then, of course, a duty to protect and serve. She's kind of a straight arrow and really, values Starfleet's law and protocol and really takes that to heart when making certain decisions while in the field.
Awesome. Okay. So it's a pretty good image of the ensign there. I'd like you to round us out with focuses that you've accrued over your very early Starfleet career.
Oh, sure. Definitely Starfleet protocol. That's like first and foremost at the Academy. Interrogation techniques. Hand-to-hand combat. Hand-to-hand combat actually was started when I was a young child on Vulcan. They really like throw everything at you while you're growing up in education, and hand phasers. As a security officer, it's very important to know hand phasers and how to shoot them, either on stun or not. Athletics. That was part of from getting injured. I really am very into staying in shape. So athletics is very important. And then grief management techniques, which came in handy when my friend died.
Well, sounds like it was a pivotal moment in your life, especially Wolf 359, as it was for many Starfleet officers and Federation citizens. So what we'll do now is round our little crew out here with Ensign Latara. So, Allie, give us a physical description of Ensign Latara and then take us through a little bit of what we need to know about them.
So, Ensign Latara is a Bajoran. The hair is kept essentially cropped very short, except for these pretty dramatic, what would almost be considered emo bangs, just off to the side and a very deep side part. Brown hair, brown eyes, about 5'5", so a little on the smaller side, but definitely stays in shape because she grew up on a farm. So she had to be very physically active and things of that nature. And she's just kept up that through, regular exercise and everything since joining the academy, despite being a science officer who specializes in botany. As far as her background, she was raised on Bajoran. She comes from a long line of people who have been farming, working in agriculture, and she was one of a small set of farmers that didn't have their crops burned and being removed from their houses during the occupation, because the small community that she was a part of was cooperative enough to essentially feed the Cardassians because they valued safety more than loyalty at the time. So once the official occupation was over, that gave some breathing room and allowed for Ensign Latara to formally apply for Starfleet because she wanted to bring something more back to the planet than she had coming out.
Okay. So tell me what they value.
So one of her biggest values is that knowledge and faith go hand in hand. The more that you know about the universe, the closer you are to the prophets. This is very important because she has seen that since the prophets aren't always present in everyday life as far as protecting the Bajoran people as a whole and thinking of them as fully benevolent, her family had to use current knowledge of the way that politics work and knowing that they were valuable in order to survive. That knowledge, essentially was able to bolster the faith that she had in the prophets. So when she joined Starfleet and going through all of the motions and essentially going into botany kind of as an accident, mostly because of how much she already knew from, growing up on a farm, she also realized that there's so much more for her to learn that must be a sign from the prophets that this is what she's meant to do. She's meant to gain knowledge. And another very deep value for her is that resistance behooves change. So the more that you resist something, the harder it is to maintain things in the way that you want them to. So when you resist, it kind of sets you in a very stagnant path. So it's easier to change your circumstances when you can. It's easier to change your mind on things when presented with evidence. It's easier to alter these things rather than staying stuck.
Okay. So what does Ensign Latara focus on then?
She does specifically focus on botany. Basically, all plants, and different but related focus is also microorganisms and toxicology both. Both of those apply for the way that certain parts of plants can interfere with the way that other things live, because toxins obviously are things that can incapacitate other life forms. So knowing how potential toxins in plants function gives her a greater understanding of the science in general.
Fantastic. And so I present our fledgling crew to you, the listeners, and now we'll go to get into some of this. I think instead of explaining a lot of the rules up front, what I want us to do is get in and pull those levers and interact with them. So we'll just explain things as they come up, as players need to make rolls. I think that's a little bit better than the upfront rules explanation before anyone will understand why we're doing it. So you can write down or mark in your logs Stardate 49238.3. It's been a long journey for most of you. Really, in effect, all of you. For you, Ensign Latara, this process is more like coming home. You had been assigned off-planet for a little while. You were assigned to DS9 early on in your Starfleet career. The issue is that there was an outbreak of something, a terrible virus, or something that mutated from a virus that you had to go work on. So you got pulled away from DS9 and Bajor for the better part of 6 to 8 months. And so you get picked up on what is in effect a personnel move for the rest of the crew here. So to give the rest of the crew a little bit of backstory, you were temporarily assigned to the USS Magellan that was moving Starfleet personnel from places in the Alpha Quadrant towards Bajor. So the three of you, minus, of course, Ensign Latara, have had, we'll just say, like a couple of weeks of not direct interactivity, but you've been on the same ship. And so that's helped. You've all been under, different department heads and that sort of thing. And you all know that you're really just cooling your heels aboard this ship until it gets to DS9. And it's beginning to go and make up that space between, right? So it's going starbase to starbase until it eventually gets to DS9 and it gets ready to offload what is in effect a couple of hundred new Starfleet officers. Because, truth be told, the scuttlebutt is that there's going to be a war. Starfleet doesn't want one. It's not interested, but it's not going to have a choice. Very recently, there was a fairly serious incursion in the Gamma Quadrant where a Federation vessel was fired on by the Dominion. And it nearly took the life of multiple Federation officers, one of them being Benjamin Sisko. And so the Defiant fought back, and they were luckily able to get out of this terrible situation they were in and back to DS9. And that's really when the wheels started moving on a lot of this stuff. And call-ups started happening. Because what the Federation is first planning on doing is doing something that it had always promised to do, which is it wants to explore the Gamma Quadrant. And part of the exploration is getting to a knowledge and understanding of the planets in the nearby sections of that wormhole that exists on the Gamma Quadrant side, but then also to begin laying sensor buoys to act as a communication network on that side. All that fundamental structure is not present yet. And so the understanding that you have is that you're probably going to get another assignment when you get to DS9. And you still don't know what that is. this comes up on sort of the final leg of your journey, as a lot of your fellow officers are in the mass, or the sort of 10 forward that the ship has, and they're all doing the same thing. Hey, have you heard anything? Hey, have you talked to this person? Do you know anybody here on station that could help us figure out what the heck we're going to do? People are nervous. That is echoing through the ship. And so I wonder if we were to take a look in at that 10 forward section, what would your characters be doing, knowing that they have maybe a few hours before DS9 is in their sights? You would know each other at least by having been around one another. You, Lieutenant, have probably been back and forth on the bridge. You have probably assigned some of these other ensigns their job duties. You'd be part of roster control.
Lieutenant Woods finds herself milling about, just checking in with folks. She is a bit of a fan of small talk as it is, a little on the chatty end, particularly odd in many cases compared to the stoicism that other commanding officers may have. But throughout, she makes sure to continue to keep those relationships going, to talk about, hey, how did that book go? How much further along are you in it? And generally trying to keep those nerves at bay with a sense of distraction in some sense. Sitting around being anxious doesn't do anything but breed more anxiety in her mind. So instead, hey, maybe a card game, maybe something along those lines to keep morale boosted.
I love that. So you're playing cards, or you're at least offering to play cards. My question is anyone else engaging in them?
She's had a few throughout, but perhaps in the moment while they're trying to plan their move, she's chattering away, just kind of noting things possibly to the point of, if she asks someone to join, they may for a little while. And then, oh no, I lost. I gotta go. See you later. And she is used to it, and she's fine with it. It doesn't really bother her all that much. So if she's sitting there, maybe she's shuffling her cards, playing an equivalent form of a one-player game for a bit, and waving at folks as they come along, saying hello, hailing them.
Awesome. Okay. So, Kavan, in your professional medical opinion, what's the best way to deal with the hurry up and wait problem that you have?
Kavan would be going around speaking with some of the crew that he has talked to in the medical bay, checking up on them, making sure that they come to him to speak of any psychological issues that they may have been having with the wait, with the unknown about the Dominion, about anything like that. So he's just kind of doing a follow-up, but he's doing it, very casually, just sitting down with them for a moment, talking some small talk to begin with, and then just asking if are you okay, and things like that. But the one thing he is drinking is an Alira Punch, which is a kind of a fruity beverage from Beta Z. And generally, if you see him in this 10 forward, he will always have one in his hand of some sort, various colors, depending on the day. But as long as his crew is okay, he seems to be in a jovial mood, and will even take part in one of the card games if it was available. Not being a very good card player, because on Beta Z, you can probably read each other very, very well anyway. So he never really learned how to play poker or anything like that, but he's intrigued by it. He will give it his best shot.
Lieutenant Woods is more than happy to try and teach her favorite games.
So, Lieutenant, you have to... This is the ace. You said this is worth 1 or 11?
Yes, so it can be high or low, because if you go over 21, then you've busted. So if you need it, if you draw it, it only adds a nominal amount. But if you have a face card already, that and an ace will make it so that you have the perfect number of 21.
I understand, but why just one card? You would think the king, being the top card, would be more superior.
You do, but that doesn't make it as fun. So we like to add a little bit of variety in it. So having it so it's a little flexible one way or the other. In many cases, there are kings, but in Earth's history, long times ago, they had emperors who would end up being ruling over many different kings of many different provinces. Some were more fair, some were not. And she continues going on and possibly starts launching into a potential. Oh, so there was this one emperor, and just continues to go on.
Okay, so Suvik and Latara, you're seeing this interaction. Really, you're also seeing this Klingon's really colorful drink. It's a little bit, it's a thing of note.
Yep. I would be sitting in 10 forward. I would have a Vulcan spiced tea because most Vulcans don't partake in alcoholic drinks. I would have my back to the window because I don't care about the view. I care about watching what's going on in 10 forward. And I would make a note that Lieutenant Woods seems a little bit nervous and is trying to fit in and engage in the crew. I notice Ensign Kavan sitting there and playing cards and looking a little puzzled, which is always interesting for a look on a Klingon's face. But that's what I would be. I'd be observing the room and my coworkers.
Okay.
So, Lieutenant, I have a king, a queen, and a jack. I would think that I would have the superior hand with this, but you say that would, what was the term? Bust me?
Right. Yeah, see, so each of those count as 10, so that's 30. That is a solid 9 points over the target number. So yes, that ends what we would call a bust. And that means, and she reaches her hand across and starts dragging the chips towards her, that means that now these belong to me. In some cases, smaller numbers, but banded together can win the day.
I am beginning to understand. So there is a bit of luck, I guess, as humans would put it, to this game. But perhaps a skill, because you have to determine, unlike I did, the amount of points that you have in your hand. And then remember this ace being 1 or 11. Perhaps in time I will get the hang of this game.
Precisely. And there's some strategies where you determine if you have somewhere around 11, 12, or 13, then that's where the skill is in. Do you really believe the next card will be low enough or will be high enough? And then you just let your chips do the talking right on the table. And if you want to play again, you just put another chip down. That'll start the next round of it.
When you won the first hand, you had that 21. I did notice a big smile come across your face. Perhaps the next time I see that smile, I will not put in as many chips as I needed to.
I wasn't smiling that much. Put your chips down. She starts getting flustered.
One of the servers stops over at the table. Can I get the two of you anything else?
Are you still enjoying your drink?
I am. It's a favorite of mine. Growing up on Beta Z, my father used to drink it all the time. He wouldn't call it warrior's juice. He would call it diplomatic juice, as it's frilly and puts people at ease when he is speaking. So I kind of got a taste for it as I was growing up. The different flavors just represent, I guess, the different moods that my father was in. When he drank the orange, he was very jovial. When he drank the blue, he tended to be upset about the person he was speaking with. So if you see me in here and you see that I have the blue, maybe it's a good thing to stay away.
That's fascinating. Now, is that common among everyone? Oh, and turns to the server, asks the question, turns to the server, looks back and forth a few times. I'll just have a lager, whatever you've got on tap.
Of course.
So, are there other meanings for other colors? And is that common among your family or Klingons in general?
My family is from the diplomatic family. We did not spend a lot of time on Kronos, so I cannot speak for any other warriors. They prefer blood wine. I never really developed the taste for it. I will drink it if necessary, but I prefer something fruitier. To me, it stimulates the taste buds more than blood wine. Blood wine tends to dour them. I like it a little bit more spritzy, as one of my previous commanders used to call it.
What does the diplomatic family say about those who order beer?
My father tended to speak more with the humans who ordered beer than anything else. They seem to, how does he put it, loosen their tongues and open their eyes a little bit more when he was in negotiations. I found it very, very intriguing. I got to sit in on one of his sessions, and the ambassador he was speaking with finished off a few, let's just say that much, and his demeanor went from very confused to very happy in a short amount of time. So my father was very pleased at how that went.
Beer will do that to most humans that I've come across, to be perfectly fair. You know, my old flight crew, that was one of the things that really brought us together, whether it was very frustrating, anything that came up during the day. Instead of, you could either blow off some steam or, like little boxing they were more fond of. That wasn't me. I didn't like too much of that. So instead, I would rather circle up with the crew and hash it out, talk it out over a couple of drinks. And, well, I just find that you're right. It might open eyes and loosen tongues. And, well, in general, it's just nice to share something together, like we are doing right now.
And most of the time, after indulging in these, they would come to me for the headache medicine when they woke up the next morning. So I got to see the after effects as well.
Yeah. I've been there. Not as often these days, but... And she, if the server comes back with the drink, she's ready to drink it.
Yep. Comes back, places it on the table.
Yeah, well, just one will keep me fine, right?
You lift the bottle towards your mouth and your comlink goes off. Lieutenant Woods?
Mrs. Woods?
Commander Garrigan would like to see you on the bridge. Right away.
Thank you. And so she would sigh and reach back and offer the bottle back to the server. Can you put this on ice for me? I'm hoping this won't take too long.
It'll be fine. They take the bottle back.
Thank you. Well, we'll just have to hold our hands here as it is, and then maybe later we'll get closer, try and get you closer to 21, right?
Sounds good, Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Woods would stand and give it a wave and start making her way towards the bridge.
Okay. So the Magellan is a Galaxy-class vessel, which means it is the same class of vessel the Enterprise D was. Very large ship, has full complement of both, science and also operational officers. It's meant to be a place, ships where families can exist at. It's a deep space vessel. It's meant to be out in space for a very long time. You would know that a lot of the families that were on the Magellan have been sent back to their home worlds, for lack of a better term. This has created a lot of, not strife, but just a little bit of frustration with some of the crew that's here because they've built their lives around being together on board the ship. That being said, you don't have any problem finding the way to the turbolift that goes to the bridge. You exit off the bridge turbolift and enter the horseshoe, which is a very traditional spot where multiple main stations are at, captain's chair in the middle, and then sort of chairs to the side. You can see immediately and without any waste of time that the captain's not on the bridge. He's obviously somewhere else, because when you get to the bridge, you see Commander Garrison in his main chair.
Commander?
Oh, Lieutenant, come down here, please.
Lieutenant approaches, just kind of sizing up the situation, seeing if there are more or less people on here, just kind of sizing up as it goes in the horseshoe as she's noting it.
Yeah, so there are a few less people here than you would see during day shift. This isn't in effect night shift, although night shift's just started, so the count goes down by how many people are normally here. And then it's likely that Garrison probably takes the night shift to allow the captain to sleep, and he's sort of in charge of that. That's not always the case, right? Every bridge staff is different. But in effect, what the commanding officer of any Starfleet vessel is he's the head of the duty roster. And so he is going to tell people when they go to work. The only person he doesn't tell is the captain. Garrison turns in the chair and sort of gestures to one of the side chairs on the bridge. This is a little butterfly feeling because this is a really important ship, and you've never actually sat on a bridge chair before. Like, not on this bridge.
Lieutenant Woods has one of those moments where she looks between the chair, looks between the commander, looks at the chair again.
Sit down, Lieutenant.
Points to herself.
Yeah, you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commander. And she would make her way over there and slowly lower herself into the chair.
He extends a data pad in your direction. Don't thank me yet.
So she accepts the data pad.
When we get to DS9, you're going to be part of some of the initial sensor sweep studies, crews that go out and into the Gamma Quadrant. Normally, we would have at least five in the crew, but for the moment, we're just going to have 4. You're an accomplished pilot. At least that's what your record says, and I believe you have the ability to control yourself through all the fun. We are going to give you 6 different sensor buoys, and you're going to go out and place them. And then you're going to do a little bit of an investigation on a planet in the Gamma Quadrant that we're interested in. The details are going to be in your data pad. I have the crew roster there that has been assigned to you. It looks like you have some familiarity with them.
Yes, I know Ensign Kavan and Ensign Suvik. This Ensign Latara.
Latara is an interesting one. Bajoran probably can give a lot of context to the space that we'll be entering. We have to be very mindful of passage through the wormhole and the Bajoran faith and the prophets they believe that exist within them.
Of course.
If you're not up on your Bajoran culture, I would start now.
I will make sure to take a book with me for the trip.
Good idea. We should be arriving at DS9 in the next hour or so. And when we get there, you'll go to one of the docking rings and acquire a runabout and then set to it immediately.
Very good, sir. And have these crew members been alerted that this is their assignment?
No, Lieutenant, that's your job.
Okay. Fantastic.
You get to spread the good news.
Wonderful. Well, I know I saw 2 of them down in 10 forward, and then all it would take is discovering the whereabouts of Ensign Latara.
Chip's computer should be able to help you out with that if you can't seem to find or locate them.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Commander, and, I'll see you likely when we're making our way down to DS9.
If not, have a good trip and stay safe.
Lieutenant Woods makes her way to find the crew.
Okay. I mean, I assume unless Kavan and Suvik have moved, unless they haven't moved in the past 10 minutes, they're still there.
Well, Ensign Kavan, guess what?
I'm not very good at guessing games, but I'm going to say I don't know.
Very well. You and I will have plenty of time to work on learning how to play blackjack and get you really in that winning mode. But for now, I have just been given the rosters for our assignment once we arrive at Deep Space Nine.
And what is this assignment going to be?
Well, and she will look over to see if Ensign Suvik is there and give an all too friendly wave and a wave over.
I side-eye her for a second, but then get up and go over. Lieutenant.
Ensign, guess what? We're going on a field trip. We've been given our assignments. Lieutenant Woods is making a realization that her cheerful colloquialisms are about to hit brick walls. Here. And she turns the data pad around to show the others a mild look of, oh, I've got to figure out how to do this on her face.
Oh, okay. Where would you like me to report to?
Well, we have about an hour until we arrive at DS9, so we can report right here to this table. I will have to try and locate Ensign Latara. Have either of you met the ensign yet?
In passing.
I have not had that pleasure.
Chances are that Kavan would have interacted with me because I'm probably in and out of sickbay from time to time for infectious diseases study.
I have seen her in sickbay.
Oh, hopefully she's all right if she's been in the sickbay.
No, she is a scientist, so her studies have brought her in from time to time.
Ah, all right, brilliant, great. More smart folks, we love this. And so she looks through the data pad to find Ensign Latara's face, the portrait that would be within there, and starts scanning the room first to see if she can locate Ensign Latara.
That's okay. That's when I walk in with a data pad in front of me.
Ah, there she is. And Lieutenant would walk over. Ensign Latara, is it?
Yes. Lieutenant Woods?
Woods. Lieutenant Cassandra Woods. Nice to meet you. I'm sorry our paths have not crossed prior to now.
They probably would have eventually.
Yeah. It is a small ship for being such a big ship. So here, come join us over at our table.
In a moment, I need to get a drink. Which table are you at?
Over here, this is Ensign Kavan and Ensign Suvik. And we can wave over a server, and Lieutenant Woods is waving down a server.
Yeah, you get the same server who comes back and, oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'll take that one off of ice, and whatever Ensign Latara has here.
Can I have a Rectagina?
Certainly. You get served your drinks. Find a way to get the four of you around the same table.
Brilliant. So I just had a conversation with Commander Garrison, and we have already received our assignments for when we arrive at DS9. We have the lovely task of starting to set out some of the sensor buoys in the Gamma Quadrant in order to improve the communication, as well as scoping out one of the planets that is there in the quadrant. Ensign Latara, I understand that you have some knowledge of the region?
Yes. DS9 is in orbit around Bajor, my home planet.
Brilliant. Every little bit of information I find helps light the way for what we need to do. So this is our task before us. She would set the data pad around, or if they have their own, I guess, deliver the files as well.
Yeah, you probably set the data pad down in front of everyone to give people an idea of what they have to look forward to. So just to give you a rough idea of the planet that you're going to be looking at anyway, because you have buoys to set and whatnot. The planet's name is Freyr 3. So it is a mostly gaseous planet, but initial reports from Freyr 3 are that there is some belief that there might be some substance to it, like it might not all be completely gaseous. And that is what Starfleet is most interested in figuring out, is if there is an actual hard surface. It's large. The planet temperature runs hotter than normal, and so thermal protection is required. It projects standard gravity, so there are no gravity concerns, but it does also have a thin atmosphere, and so respirators are going to be required for most of the crew. Probably something that Kavan and his Klingon physiology could probably overcome, but it might also not be something that he's willing to risk. There is also a abandoned station in orbit around Freyr 3. And so your basic orders subsist of this. You're to deploy a buoy, right? At least one of the buoys here in orbit of the planet. You are to investigate the space station ahead of any potential movement on the ground of Freyr 3. The idea being is that Starfleet believes there might be information on this abandoned station that could perhaps shed some light on what's going on the planet below. It would also keep you from having to attempt to land on the planet, which Starfleet believes might be very dangerous.
Does it say who occupied the space station?
It's unknown. There is some reference that at one point the Ferengi may have used it as a stopping point, but if the Ferengi have left it behind, then they don't consider it of any value. They don't even consider it of enough value to tow out of orbit.
That is very un-Ferengi-like of them.
Tis.
Lieutenant, it appears based on the mission listed on the datapad that we may encounter hostile individuals on an abandoned space station.
That seems like it would be a possibility. Yes, but I would say it would be better to be prepared, perhaps even if it has been abandoned and the Ferengi did not go through the efforts to remove it. If they were indeed there, then perhaps contagion as well is not to be ruled out. Any other sort of mechanical malfunctions, there are a plethora of reasons, but if it is potentially occupied by hostiles, I am very glad to have you coming along with us, Vincent.
Well, the only reason I ask is that, should I bring a phaser rifle with me?
Lieutenant Woods is both excited by the idea of rifles and then also like, that seems like a lot of work and responsibility too.
Yes, Lieutenant. I will just bring my standard issue phaser with me.
Thank you very much. But yes, any other concerns, questions, thoughts on our task ahead of us?
No, ma'am. It's very well laid out here. I will probably not be of assistance in laying the buoys, but I'll begin to maybe do some research of this area and see what type of life forms may have existed here in the previous era.
That would be most useful and cautious of us too.
You said we're going to the Gamma Quadrant?
That is correct. It looks as though the planet that we would be investigating in the Gamma Quadrant is Freyr 3. And in particular, we are to look at the station that is there, as well as potentially if there's rock under all that gas.
Okay. I'm going to take a long sip of my Rectogino. That means we're going through the wormhole.
I raise an eyebrow. That sounds very intriguing.
Well, there's a wormhole that connects the Alpha Quadrant to the Gamma Quadrant right here next to Bajor and right next to DS9. And the Bajoran people and I believe that that's where the prophets who help guide our lives reside. So it'll be an experience.
That's exciting. Have you been through the wormhole before? I suppose you have?
I have not. I grew up on the planet. I joined Starfleet and I've been away from home for the majority of my training.
Well, then this will be an experience indeed. I'm excited for you, Ensign.
So we have to set up this buoy. We have to go look at this space station. When do we depart?
We are set to arrive at DS9 within the hour. So I guess we better all drink up.
I do not partake in alcohol.
Do you have a drink of other kinds?
I've already drank in my tea. I allow myself 1 Vulcan spiced tea a day.
Oh, how very prudent.
Everything in moderation, except alcohol. That diseases the mind.
So we'll smash cut there to our group together getting prepared, not to beam over, but to walk, because the ship is going to get traditionally docked here to offload so many. So it'll be a series of docking, but then also for some of the more, we'll just say ranked crew members, they'll come over later. All in all, the Magellan unloads roughly 400 Starfleet officers who go into all manner of different vessels. Some of them have plans to stay on the station. Some of them go to Bajor to assist the planet with what they say are preparations. Others go to other ships, smaller ones that are here docked at DS9 to go into this space in the Alpha Quadrant to prepare for what may come next. And so our crew gets settled into a runabout, and then after a little time is going to be given flight clearance to leave and go into the Gamma Quadrant. I wonder, however, is there anything then, I'll ask Lieutenant Woods, that you're going to attempt to requisition before you leave? Because they got to load the probes in, and they got to do all the prep for the runabout itself. But Ensign Suvik did mention that, might like to acquire potentially a phaser rifle, something like that. She probably doesn't have clearance for that. You might be able to go down and speak to the folks at the in the armory here on the Magellan and perhaps acquire one.
Awesome. So yeah, that seems like what she will do. Lieutenant Woods makes her way down to the armory and approaches whoever's there. Is like, hi, our assignment is going to potentially take us to an unknown, whether or not it is occupied or not, space station. And for our safety and security, I would like to requisition or request one of the phaser rifles, given the unknown circumstances that we'll be going into on this as of yet unknown space station.
So the person that you're talking with is someone you've had a little interaction with. They're a female Andorian, and they go by Creocean Dastisis. So the lieutenant you're speaking to, just for you, will just go by Lieutenant Creocia. It's just their first name. It's easier to pronounce than their full Andorian name, which is like riding a bicycle with your tongue.
This is a question for our storyteller. Would it be possible that I have either played with / gambled with this character in order to establish a connection with them?
Sure, why not? Seems fine.
There's probably a good chance that even in losing and winning in any sort of card games, that Lieutenant Woods has had the utmost respect and honoring the system of merits that this lieutenant has, but is ultimately in her mode of charm and communication. Just, hi, how's it going? A little bit of small talk. Hey, so, and then would have launched into, hey, it was really great seeing you last week. That drink that you turned me on to was absolutely delicious. Had an undernote of pine, I guess. It was very delicious. And you look really great today. Is that a new way you've done your hair? That's fantastic. I have a request.
Go on.
So, we have just received our assignment, one of which is to investigate a rather sketchy looking space station. We're a little concerned about it. Looks, I don't know if just standard phasers are going to cut it. So I would like to request a phaser rifle.
A phaser rifle.
Flashes a smile.
I see. Everyone comes to the armory when they want something that the standard issue won't adhere to.
That is, in fact, what the armory is for, is it not?
Well, the armory is for the necessary arms deployment when it comes to the ship's needs. You'll be taking one of the Magellan's requisite rifles in this case. And so we just want to make sure, of course, that we would get it back at a future date. But what I would like to know exactly is, where are you going that you need a phaser rifle specifically?
Lieutenant Woods leans in. So, we all know what they're whispering about, right? We all know, we've kind of picked up what everyone's putting down as far as what we're just trying to keep an eye out for out here in the dark, right?
We have heard, yes, that the Dominion is making concerted efforts and movements to potentially come into the Alpha Quadrant. something that we're all prepared for.
Right. And you know what makes folks really prepared when they're potentially going on a dark space station in an area that might be very dangerous?
A high-powered weapon?
Yes. I see, Lieutenant, I knew you and I got along very well. So
I can see that you're connecting with your base human emotions, yes.
that is very true. Yes, I am full of those.
Full of something, no doubt. Here's what I would like the player to do. We're going to have our first roll of the game. Okay, so let me talk about some of the core mechanics when it comes to SDA. I think those are important. When your character attempts a task, right, I, the game master, is going to tell you the difficulty of the task, meaning the number of successes which you must roll. Usually that number is from 0 to 5. Now, generally speaking, as far as the way I run my tables is if no roll is required, I'm never going to ask you to roll it. I won't make you roll the, okay, roll just and don't mess up, because there's no reason to make that roll. On your character sheet, you're going to have an attribute and a department which will best fit the action that you're going to take. Attributes and departments have ratings which help define the character themselves. So attributes can go from, roughly speaking, 7 to say 12. Department skill goes from 1 to 5. What you do is you take those two numbers and add them together. And then you're going to roll 2d20. Sometimes, occasionally, it might be more than 2. We'll get into those when they arise. And what you want to do is you want to roll lower, right, than the tasks, than that difficulty. You want to roll under your department rating if at all possible. If you're going to use a focus, which we'll talk about. So let's say, for instance, that Lieutenant Woods is clearly going to use presence. It's going to be a social interaction. What I want to know, though, is with that social interaction, if you're going to use presence, which you will, is it's going to be a presence command roll, right? But I kind of want to know if there's any focus that you're going to try to utilize in this regard.
There is. I have a focus in persuasion.
Okay. So focuses represent specialized subjects, right, which we talked about before. Focuses can be any topic. They apply to attribute and department roles, right, where the focus is considered relevant. I agree. You are trying to persuade this person. And so what that means is that any die roll that you roll that is under your department rating will count as 2 successes. Okay?
Very cool.
You're going to roll 2d20. Your rough target number of successes that you need is just 1, right? And so go ahead and give us a roll, and we'll see where we land after that.
I rolled 2 20s, which in any other game would be fantastic.
Okay, so
do we get mulligans?
We do not get mulligans.
Okay.
So in Star Trek Adventures, your ideal roll is as low as possible, right? So the diametric opposite of that is 20, which creates complications. So you've rolled 2 complications on a single roll. And so there are a couple of ways that you could deal with this. There is a pool that the characters have, and that is the momentum pool. So it's a function of the Star Trek system. And you get 1 point of momentum for every character in play, right? So you start with 4, or I'll start this session with 4. Buying off complications, right, is going to cost you 2 momentum. So you could potentially work out everything in the pool. You could take it from 4 to 0 and buy off the complications. The downside is that it's still a failure, but I would just say, as your storyteller, you do not want 2 complications sitting there, because that likely means that something terrible will happen. Maybe not terrible, but just not going to be good for the character. Possibly not going to be good for the crew.
Yeah, so in that case, the best option for us would be to spend 2 of our 4 momentum to get those complications gone.
You could, or you could potentially spend a point of determination. You only have 1, And you can call at that point on an existing value that you have and in effect challenge that value. And what that would allow you to do is take one of the d20s that had been rolled and consider it a 1. Meaning, this is super important to you, and you're willing to spend that point of determination to make one of those 20s a 1 automatically. And then you could buy off the complication with 2 momentum, still leave 2 in the pool, but have no determination for the rest of the episode.
Okay, I think that I will attempt to use that determination just because I do not like the idea of starting this out this way. Okay, so in order to spend my determination, I must use one of my values.
So what value would you call on to do so?
I would like to call on the value of always prepared, always vigilant.
Okay, I think that's a fantastic value to call on. So basically what you're saying is, not only do we need this piece of equipment, Quartermaster, but I have to have it because we have to be prepared. We don't know what's out there. That's sort of the argument you're making. It takes a little bit of convincing, which we've done narratively a little here. And what the lieutenant tells you is that they will allow you the use of one of Magellan's phaser rifles. But if the Magellan isn't at DS9 when you get back, it has to be checked into DS9 security and be prepared to be turned back over when the Magellan does return.
Understood. I'll even send you a little note with it as well.
Just come back with the rifle.
Thank you very much. We will.
You walk out of the USS Magellan with a phaser rifle to hand to your security officer, who will likely be emotionally neutral to it arriving.
Ensign, I have a gift for you.
I look over.
Ensign Suvik, may I present to you our temporarily requisitioned phaser rifle?
Thank you, Lieutenant. And I take it and I go put it in a compartment. We're on the runabout, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll put it in a compartment that's designated for phaser rifles or any other weapon.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope we don't need to use it, but as soon as we get ourselves clear of that station, then we will be hopefully not needing to use it at all and return it back to the lieutenant along with my dignity, and goes to move over towards the pilot seat as she says that.
Oh, one thing I would like the crew to do, it's a runabout. I have not considered what it's going to be called or what it's named. Please come up with the name of the runabout.
Let's go with the Beethoven.
Okay. The runabout Beethoven. Very good. All right. You get clearance from ops that you are cleared to take off and begin your work. They give you a rough coordinate for where you can get to the wormhole opening. And our adventure is off and running. So what I'm going to do there is pause our episode here and allow you, our listening community, to think about what is going to happen to the next. And then we'll get to sort of the payoff as the episodes continue on. So I want to thank the cast here and Skip especially for joining us on STA, the first run out of Star Trek Adventures for the old ways. And we'll get to see much more of the crew very soon. Thanks.